Welcome back, everyone, to the ThingRex Audio Experience.
Glad to be back.
Last time, we kind of dipped our toes into the Internet of Things.
Yeah, we got
all those smart devices and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But today, we're going even deeper.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into how those things actually communicate.
Okay, so we're figuring out how all these devices, all these things,
Yeah,
how they talk to each other.
exactly. It's like we're learning the language of smart devices.
Cool.
So we're focusing on one really important protocol today called MQTT.
Right.
And just so everyone knows, this deep dive is based on some really insightful articles from ThingRex.com.
Of course.
So big shout out to them.
Yes, definitely.
Now you might be thinking, why should I, a non-technical business person, care about how devices talk?
I could see someone thinking that.
Right. But you'll see how even the smallest choices about data and communication can have a big impact on your business.
Yeah, that's right. It really can.
Especially when it comes to security and scaling your business so it can grow smoothly.
Yeah, absolutely. You really got to lay that foundation correctly to grow.
Exactly. So let's get into it. What is MQTT?
So imagine MQTT like a tiny but really reliable postal service, but specifically designed for your devices.
Okay.
You know, these devices, your sensors or your smart lights, they often run on batteries, so they have to be super efficient with their energy.
That's right.
They can't just be guzzling energy.
Right.
So MQTT kind of steps in and helps them conserve that energy by just sending the most important information.
So it's like sending a postcard instead of this big, bulky package.
That's a really good analogy, yeah.
Okay, so we're keeping things lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
We're keeping things efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But we have all these devices sending information.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure everything is organized and secure? How do we not just have chaos?
That's a good question. That's where the idea of the client-server model comes in. It's a very, very common pattern in computing.
Okay.
And it's really useful to think about it, think of it like ordering food in a restaurant.
All right, I like where this is going.
Yeah. All right, so you're the client, right? You're the one placing the order.
Okay.
You're hungry. The waiter, that's the broker.
Okay.
They're taking your order to the kitchen, which is like the server in this case, right?
Yeah.
And then bringing your food back to you.
Okay.
So if you kind of map that onto the world of MQTT,
Yeah.
our devices are those hungry clients.
Right, so they're sending their little data orders to the kitchen,
Yes.
which is like some cloud platform.
That's right.
And the broker is that super efficient waiter
Exactly.
zipping those orders back and forth.
Yeah, making sure all the orders get to the right place.
Okay, I like that. So no sneaking into this restaurant without the proper ID, I guess. So how do we make sure, once a device asks in, how do we make sure it can't just access everything?
Right.
That's where things like policies come in, right?
Yeah, you got it. So policies are like the access rules for a secure building. You can't just wander anywhere you want, right?
Right.
They define exactly what each device is allowed to do. So let's take an example.
All right.
We got a temperature sensor. Okay. It might have permission to enter, let's say, the temperature data room,
Yeah.
but not have access to the control room, you know, where you're changing sensitive settings.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that our devices are only doing the things that they're supposed to do.
So it's kind of like making sure the waiter in that restaurant example sticks to taking orders
Exactly.
and doesn't start cooking in the kitchen.
Right.
Everyone has their own role and their own permissions to keep things running smoothly.
Right. You don't want your waiter back there, you know, messing with the stove.
Right. No, we want to keep things safe and organized. And I remember actually the article on ThingRex.com mentioned something about the importance of not expressing the private key.
Oh, yeah. That's a really important point.
Yeah.
So that private key, you can think of it like the secret PI for your devices, like digital passport.
Okay.
You don't want someone else to get that, because then they can impersonate your device
Right.
and potentially wreak all sorts of havoc.
Lots of problems. So it's like keeping your bank PI in secret. You wouldn't share that with anyone.
Nope. Right.
Keep it close to the vest.
The article also had a really interesting example of how this security plays out in the real world. It talked about when the connection attempt failed
Oh, yeah.
because of authorization issues.
Yeah, that's like showing up at a restaurant and you don't have a reservation.
And they're like, sorry, you're not on the list.
Exactly, yeah. We're all booked up. So you got to make sure you have those credentials.
So it's not just about having the right ID.
Yeah.
You need to be on that guest list.
We got to be on the list.
Okay, so now we've talked about getting our device into that restaurant, you know, making sure they have access.
Right.
But then how is all that data organized? Like once it arrives in the kitchen, The cloud platform, that's where MQTT topics come in, right?
Got it.
Okay, so let's talk about those. What are MQTT topics? Why are they so important?
Well, think of it like you're in this gigantic library with millions of books, right? Every subject you can imagine. Right.
If you don't have a good system for organizing those books, it'd be impossible to find anything.
Complete chaos.
Complete and utter chaos. So MQTT topics are like the library's cataloging system, right?
Okay.
They're acting as labels or categories for all the information that's flowing through your network.
Okay, so instead of one giant, overwhelming bookshelf, we have different sections for different types of information.
No, you got it. Makes it much more manageable.
That does sound much better. So this sounds pretty straightforward, but is there anything tricky about this?
Well, there's one thing. If everyone organizes their books differently,
Oh, okay.
the library basically descends into chaos.
Yeah, it would defeat the purpose.
It would completely defeat the purpose. So the same thing applies to MQTT. If everyone's creating their own unique topic structure, it's really difficult to find the data you need, to analyze it, to ensure everything is secure. It's a big mess.
So we need some sort of agreement
Yes.
on how we're going to organize these topics.
You need a standard.
Like a universal library cataloging system.
Right.
So what does that look like?
Luckily, there's a fantastic article on ThingRex.com called MQTT Topic Structure, and they really lay out a great framework for doing this. They suggest organizing your topics based on 5 key elements:
Okay.
purpose, business entity, metadata, object, and feature.
5 things. All right, so let's break those down a little bit.
All right, let's imagine you're a company that makes those smart thermostats we were talking about. Got them in homes all across the country.
Yeah.
So the purpose level, that would distinguish between data that's coming from the thermostats and commands going to them.
Oh, okay.
So you'd be separating those flows of information.
So you don't accidentally tell the thermostat to turn the heat up when you just want to know the temperature.
Exactly, yeah. You don't want to get those crossed. That's a security risk. Then you have the business entity level. So that might be separating data based on different regions or departments in your company.
So you could have like a distinction between all the data coming from thermostats, in the Northeast versus the Southwest.
That's right. Okay, I see. What about this metadata level?
So that's providing additional context about the data that's being sent. Things like the timestamp or the software version of the device, really any other relevant information.
Okay, so it's not just 72 degrees, it's also 72 degrees taken at this time with this version of the software?
Exactly. It's like a little data package.
Really good context there. All right, and then we have the object level.
Right. So in this case, that would be the specific thermostat.
Okay.
So you can actually track the data that's coming from that individual device.
So if one thermostat's acting funky, you can zero in on that.
Exactly. And finally, we have the feature level,
Okay.
which specifies what kind of data is being sent. So temperature, humidity, battery level, and so on.
So it's really breaking it all down and making it clear what information we're looking at.
Exactly. No more searching through that giant, messy bookshelf. So I'm realizing this structure isn't just about being tidy. It's also about security. Like you said, you could easily separate temperature data from firmware updates, making sure only certain people have access to that sensitive information.
Absolutely. And this is really important for any business, especially as they start to grow and scale. You don't want things to fall apart as you get bigger.
We definitely want to avoid that.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. We've gone from the basics of MQTT, this tiny postal service, to the importance of security, this restaurant example, to then how we organize all this data. It all seems very technical, but I can see how these decisions are really important for businesses.
I think that's a great point. It's pretty amazing how something as technical as MQTT can have such a big impact on businesses, especially with all these devices we have nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about all this efficiency and security, but I'm kind of curious. How does MQTT actually help businesses make money or improve how they do things? Do you have any examples of that?
Oh, tons of examples. Think about a manufacturing plant. Hundreds of sensors are tracking all kinds of stuff, like temperature or even the vibrations of equipment.
Oh,
And with MQTT, instead of someone having to go around and manually check each machine,
right.
those machines can just report their status in real time.
Oh, wow.
So you can do preventative maintenance, catch those small problems before they turn into big, expensive disasters.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like having a doctor constantly monitoring your factory.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, catching those early warning signs.
Wow. So MQTT isn't just about making things smart. It's about making them like run better, be more sustainable, and ultimately make more money.
Exactly. You got it.
It's amazing how these little messages can make such a difference.
They really can. And speaking of little messages, there's another aspect of MQTT that we got to talk about. Quality of service.
Okay, quality of service.
Yeah.
What's that? Is that like first class versus economy for data?
You know what? That's a perfect analogy.
Okay.
Just like airlines, MQTT has different levels of service,
Okay.
each with its own, like, trade-offs. Think about it. Sometimes you just need to send a quick postcard.
Yeah?
You don't really care if it gets lost in the mail.
Yeah.
That's like what we call QoS here at MQTT. Fire and forget, as
Yeah.
we like to say.
Okay.
That's for stuff that's not super critical.
All right, so what if the information is important and we absolutely need to make sure it gets there? What then?
Well, if you want to be a little more certain, you can send a registered letter
Okay.
with, like, delivery confirmation. That's similar to QoS1 and MQTT. It guarantees the message will be delivered at least once.
Okay.
But there is a chance, a small chance, it could arrive twice.
So it's like there's a little more overhead involved, but you've got a little more peace of mind.
Exactly. And then for those really, really important messages, like sending a package that needs a signature, we've got QoS2.
Okay.
The most reliable option. It makes sure that message is delivered once and only once.
Okay, so if we're like sending commands to a machine or like software updates, we probably want to go with QoS2.
Yeah, you want that extra assurance.
For sure.
Yeah, it really comes down to, like, how important is this message versus how much does it cost if there's a delay or some data gets lost?
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like choosing the right shipping method. You wouldn't
Yeah.
send something super valuable using the cheapest option.
Exactly. Data is valuable. And understanding these quality of service levels, it helps you make sure that your data arrives safely, securely, and on time, which ultimately helps your business.
This is all making a lot more sense now.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to see how all these technical details are connected to what actually happens in a business.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And MQTT is like a fundamental technology for the Internet of Things. I mean, think about it. From those connected factories, smart farms, healthcare, even smart cities,
Yeah, wow.
MQTT is playing this big role.
It's everywhere.
It really is shaping how our world is becoming more and more connected.
So we've seen how it makes communication more efficient, keeps data safe, and even has those different reliability options.
Yeah, and we've talked about how those choices can affect things like how efficient your business is, how sustainable it is, and even like coming up with new ways to make money.
It's been a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, it has.
Let's just quickly summarize what we've learned so far in our deep dive.
Sounds good.
All right, so as we wrap up our deep dive into this whole world of MQTT, what are the big things our listeners should remember?
I think the most important takeaway is that MQTT isn't just some, super technical thing that only engineers need to worry about.
Right.
It's actually a really powerful tool that can help any business, big or small, to really take advantage of all that the Internet of Things has to offer.
It's like we've been given this backstage pass to see how all this connected device magic happens.
Exactly. We've seen how even the smallest decisions about how data is communicated, how secure it is, and how it's organized can have a big impact.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect. From the factory floor to a farmer's field, the way we connect our devices can affect everything.
Absolutely. Efficiency, costs, even sustainability, it all comes back to these choices. It's about understanding that these technical choices have real business implications.
Yeah, for sure. So any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they navigate this ever-changing world?
My advice would be to embrace the power of MQTT, but do it strategically.
Okay.
Take the time to understand the basics, look at the different options out there, and then choose the solutions that really fit what you need for your business.
So don't just jump on the bandwagon because it's the cool new thing.
Right. Really think about how this tech can help you reach your goals.
And don't be afraid to, try things out, experiment a little.
Exactly. The world of IoT is constantly changing, so be ready to adapt.
Be flexible.
Be flexible, exactly. And, you might just find those aha moments that help you use this technology to its full potential.
Love that. Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. Big thanks to our expert for guiding us through the world of MQTT.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to learn even more about MQTT and all sorts of other IoT topics, be sure to check out the full articles on ThingRex.com.
They're a great resource.
They really are. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.